New CNN poll out right now showing high disapproval of President Trump's strikes on Iran. A brand new CNN poll found that nearly 6 in 10 Americans disapprove of the airstrikes on Iran. And there are few signs of good news for the president elsewhere in this poll. 59% of Americans say they don't trust President Trump to make the right decisions on the use of force in Iran. 60% of Americans do not believe the president has a clear plan on how to handle the situation. My panel is back now, or starting now, I should say. We've been listening to the president. Tyler, you cover the White House. You've been covering this all weekend. Is this data that's going to surprise the White House?
I think the White House will largely ignore some of this data, but I think one of the things that we just saw is the president has clearly struggled to outline clear objectives for what he is doing and what measures of success are and how long this is going to go. As Kristen said, this is the first time we're hearing from the president in a live setting, and I think there's a lot of Americans who woke up Saturday surprised by this operation, surprised that this could go on for weeks, and have a lot of questions about what we're trying to do here and how will Americans know when it ends. And I think the president did not provide a lot of clarity there about what the length of this operation looks like. And he also is saying that American troops may be on the ground. The one thing that I would say, Dana, is I spoke to a lot of the president's most ardent supporters over the weekend, and they are giving him a long leash. The MAGA base, there's obviously some high-profile vocal opponents, Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, but a lot of the rank and file are giving the president some space to operate here, and we'll see how long that lasts.
And that also seems to include Republican voters. Let's look at a little bit more of our poll question about approving the strikes, and this is separated by party. 77% of Republicans say that they approve of it, which is interesting given the fact that a lot of Republicans voted for the president thinking that there would not be, okay, maybe not any war, but not, in his words, endless wars. Independents 32, Democrats 18. This is something that is really interesting, though, to look at. Let's put up young voters. The question of whether young voters, this is 18 to 34-year-olds, support these strikes. 71% say that they disapprove. You know, generationally, usually it's younger people who don't like war. I mean, we go back and look through time, maybe not World War II, but since World War II.
Because the young people are the ones who are going to be on the front lines if there is war, if there are troops on the ground, or even, you know, as we start to look at the casualties of the conflict that is already underway, it's more than likely that it's going to be young people at the greatest risk. They are who our frontline military members are. I think it's just interesting that when you go back to the partisan divide in the latest CNN poll, that Republicans are willing to support Trump. They are willing to give him a long runway. They are willing to kind of take his word for it on whatever the topic is of the day. I think it goes back to the fact Trump said, you know, MAGA is whatever I say it is. And this is just the latest example of that. It is very true, which is why there are people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and like Tucker Carlson who said, no, we thought MAGA had certain principles and we're not sticking to those principles. But I think they're realizing that a lot of the Republican Party and MAGA is about loyalty to Trump, supporting Trump, whatever that means.
Yeah, and the poll does bear that out. People who describe themselves as MAGA give the president an even longer leash than those who just describe themselves as regular Republicans, whatever that means these days.
Yeah, I mean, Republicans are already facing a very difficult election cycle, and now it seems like, at least in the short term, they're all going to be defending something that is unpopular and not really fully understood by the American public. I think, to Tyler's point, what you saw from the defense secretary and the chairman of the Joint Chief this morning, their press conference at the Pentagon, and from the president just a few minutes ago, is this effort to explain what they're trying to do, what the objectives are, because there's an awareness that that's not clear. It's clear from the president's interviews that maybe he hasn't been entirely certain about what he wants to do. At first it was regime change. Now today what we're hearing is this is just to sort of neuter Iran and make sure that they cannot be a hostile actor in the region. But in terms of answering that question about why did we have to do this now? Why is this worth risking American lives? The president continued to say that the intelligence showed that Iran was close to having the missile capability of striking the United States. We've heard imminent threat, we've heard soon, close to that. I don't know what their definition of that is, but the first briefings by the Pentagon for members of Congress over the weekend, people left those meetings saying we didn't see any evidence that these threats are imminent. And so, I think a lot of people recognize that the regime in Iran is a problem, has been a problem for a long time. There are a lot of people who are going to give the president some leeway on this. But generally, they are in a hole. There's a deficit. The country does not understand why this is the right thing to do and worth doing right now. And even as they are trying to clarify the objectives, they have still not, I don't think, sold the country on why they had to do this right now. This is the 7th country that this president has authorized military force against in 13 months. And this is far different from any of the others. We're talking about a weeks-long campaign. We've seen casualties. And the plan, the strategy is much more opaque than it was, say, in Venezuela just weeks ago, where they went in, they knew who the successor was going to be, the new government. They had a plan they had a very simple objective, get Maduro out. This is much more open-ended, and I think that's part of why so many Americans are looking at this skeptically.
All right, everybody, thank you so much. Don't go too far. As we've been talking about, a lot of Democrats in Congress are drawing parallels between this moment and the invasion of Iraq. The Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, a veteran of that war, said there's no comparison.
This is not Iraq. This is not endless. I was there for both. Our generation knows better, and so does this president. He called the last 20 years of nation-building wars dumb, and he's right. This is the opposite. This operation is a clear, devastating, decisive mission. Destroy the missile threat, destroy the Navy, no nukes.
Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Chris DeLuzio of Pennsylvania, who is also an Iraq War veteran and sits on the Armed Services Committee. Thank you so much for being here. Your response to Secretary Hegseth?
Well, I remember hearing something similar out of then Secretary Rumsfeld. And yet, even today, Secretary of Defense Hegseth, what did he say? He said, well, it's not a regime change war, but there's been regime change. I don't think they know what they are doing. They've now launched this war. We have 4 dead Americans, which is horrible, others battling their wounds. They've spent through billions of dollars already. I think folks at home want cheaper health care, cheaper housing. I go on and on. They don't want billions spent on unnecessary wars overseas and Americans coming home in flag-draped caskets. It's not what people voted for, certainly not.